We see it every single day, that tiny little mark just floating above the line. But what if I told you the humble apostrophe has a secret identity? Yep, it leads a double life, and its hidden history is exactly why it causes so much confusion. So today, we are cracking the case.
And really, this is the central mystery, right? How did one tiny symbol end up with two completely different jobs? I mean, on the surface, it's a total paradox, one that has stumped writers for centuries. But the answer, well, it's been hiding in plain sight this whole time, deep in the history of the English language.
Okay, so on one hand, you've got possession, like the eagle's feathers. The feathers belong to the eagle. Simple enough. But then, on the other hand, it shows omission, like in they're late, where it's telling you a letter is missing from they are. These two jobs seem to have nothing to do with each other. So, what's the connection?
All right, let's start by digging right into this paradox. The key to understanding the apostrophe's double life isn't really about what it does today, but what it was originally designed to do in the first place. So get this, its first job, and for a long time, its only job, was to mark an omission. Linguists have a fancy word for this, elision. When the apostrophe first showed up in English, way back in the 16th century, its one and only purpose was to point to a spot where a letter had been dropped, usually to make writing sound more like how people actually talked. And contractions are the most obvious proof of this, right? The apostrophe is literally a placeholder. In don't, it's standing in for the O. In there, it's replacing the A. It's like a tiny little signpost that says, hey, a letter used to be here. Even in a weird one like won't, it's still just marking an absence. This, right here, is the apostrophe's core identity. Okay, so if the apostrophe's real job is to mark missing letters, how in the world did it get roped into showing possession? This is where things get really interesting. This is where we uncover the secret. All right, let's rewind the clock way back to Old English. See, back then, you didn't need an apostrophe to show that something belonged to someone. You just tacked an ES onto the end of a noun. So the king's crown was simply Cheeningus crown. That's it. No apostrophe anywhere. But of course, language is always on the move. It's always changing. And over hundreds of years as English evolved, people just stopped pronouncing that E in the possessive ending. So that two-syllable sinningus just got smushed into the one-syllable sinnings. The sound literally vanished from speech. And this is the big aha moment. When grammarians in the 17th century were trying to nail down the rules of the language, they looked at that possessive S and realized, wait a minute, this is just an old ending where a letter went missing. So what did they do? They used the only tool they had for that job, the apostrophe. The possessive apostrophe wasn't created to show ownership. It was put there to mark the ghost of that old unspoken E. So the big takeaway here is this. The apostrophe doesn't actually have two jobs. It has one. It's always a marker for a missing letter. The only difference is, in contractions, it's a missing modern letter. In possessives, it's a missing historical letter. Boom. Paradox solved. But, just because we've solved the historical mystery doesn't mean all our problems are over. In fact, this whole one job, two applications history is precisely why we get into so many fights about apostrophes today. Okay, let's tackle the big one, the one everyone asks about. If an apostrophe marks possession, why in the world is the dog wagged its tail written without one? It feels like it completely breaks the rule we just figured out. And here's the clash, right? On one side, you have its, which follows our rule perfectly. The apostrophe is standing in for the missing I in it is. But then you have the possessive its on the other side, which just seems to be a total rebel. So what is going on here? Well, the answer is all about family. Its doesn't hang out with the nouns. It belongs to the possessive pronoun family. And if you look at the rest of its family, my, yours, his, hers, ours, theirs, none of them use an apostrophe. You'd never write hers or theirs, right? Basically, the English language made a choice. It decided it was way more important to keep its consistent with its pronoun buddies, and crucially, to avoid confusion with the super common contraction its, so it sacrificed one rule for the sake of making things clearer overall. This whole battle between rules leads us straight into another modern-day conflict. And this one isn't so much about right versus wrong. It's more like a battle between two completely different philosophies of what punctuation's even for. Okay, so when a name ends in S, like James, what do? Do you add another S after the apostrophe or not?
Well, it depends on who you ask. Book publishers, they follow the Chicago style, and they'll tell you to write James's. But journalists, they use AP style, and they'll write James's. And here's the kicker. Both are technically correct, just in different worlds.
And the why behind this is actually fascinating. The Chicago Manual of Style's whole philosophy is that writing should reflect how we speak. We actually say James's with that little extra syllable, so we should write James's. But AP style, it's all about speed and visual simplicity, which is crucial for news. James's is just cleaner and faster to scan with your eyes. So it's really a choice. Do you want to reflect sound or optimize for sight? All right, so we've covered the rules, we've covered the style wars. Now let's talk about the most common mistake of all. And more importantly, what it tells us about how our brains actually process language.
I guarantee you've seen a sign like this. It's the infamous grocer's apostrophe, where a totally normal plural word gets an apostrophe slapped on for no apparent reason. And yeah, it's easy to poke fun at, but there's actually a pretty logical reason why this mistake happens all the time.
The problem, it turns out, is sound. Think about it. In spoken English, the ending for plurals like apples, possessives like apples, and the contraction apples for apple is, they all sound exactly the same. It's just that S or Z sound. So when we're writing, our brain hears that sound and sometimes just grabs the version that looks the most, I don't know, official? The one with the apostrophe?
But here's the plot twist. There is one time when it's actually correct to use an apostrophe to make something plural, and that's with single lowercase letters. Why? It's purely for clarity. I mean, if you wrote dot your I's, you'd read the word is. The apostrophe in I's acts like a tiny little separator, making it instantly clear what you mean. It's a perfect example of punctuation just being a tool to help us see things correctly.
So if you want one simple way to remember the apostrophe's true identity, here it is. This is the big takeaway. Just think of it as a tiny tombstone. That's it. Whether it's marking the grave of the O from not, or that ancient, long-dead E from Old English, it's always just marking the spot where a letter used to be. See, this little mark isn't just some random, annoying rule. It's a fossil record of how our language has lived and breathed and changed over time. It's a tiny tombstone with a huge story to tell. And knowing that secret, well, it doesn't just make you a better writer. It lets you see this hidden logic, this amazing system, humming away right beneath the surface of every single word.